Southeast Asia lies a quieter world, one shaped not by modern skylines, but by mountains, rivers, and ancient rhythms of life. Scattered across dense jungles, perched high above the clouds or hidden within remote valleys, these villages exist in places where the natural world still dictates the pace of human existence. Here, life unfolds differently. In these distant corners, time seems to slow, and the line between the physical and the spiritual begins to blur. Join us as we journey into the most enchanted villages of Southeast Asia, where nature and humanity remain deeply intertwined, and where a way of life, fragile yet enduring, continues to survive on the edges of a rapidly changing world. Cat Village, Vietnam. High in the northern mountains of Vietnam, near the border with China, there is a place where the clouds don't just pass overhead, they settle, drift, and linger, wrapping the land in a quiet, shifting veil. This is Sapa, the only village which has snow and ice in Vietnam. And tucked just beyond its misty ridgelines lies Cat Village, a place that feels less like a destination and more like a memory waiting to be rediscovered. At first glance, the landscape feels almost unreal. Terraced rice fields cascade down the mountainside in soft curved layers like steps carved by time itself. Depending on the season, they glow in shades of emerald green or golden amber, catching the light in a way that feels almost painterly. But it's in the early morning, when the fog rolls gently through the valley, that Cat reveals its most enchanting side, when the entire village seems to float between earth and sky. Life here moves at a different pace. There are no hurried footsteps, no constant noise, only the distant sound of water flowing over rocks, the rustle of wind through the fields, and the quiet rhythm of daily routines that have remained unchanged for generations. The village is home to the Hmong people, an ethnic minority group whose traditions are deeply rooted in the land itself. You'll see women in intricately embroidered clothing dyed in deep indigo, each pattern telling a story passed down through time. It's not something preserved for display, it's lived, worn, and carried forward every single day. As you follow the narrow paths winding through the village, you begin to notice the details. Wooden homes built by hand standing firmly against the mountain slopes. Small streams cutting through the terrain, feeding both the land and the lives around it. A waterfall hidden just beyond a bend, its steady flow echoing through the valley like a quiet heartbeat. But what makes Cat truly unforgettable isn't just what you see, it's what you feel. There's a sense of distance here. Not just from the cities, but from the pace and pressure of the modern world. It's the kind of place where time stretches, where a single moment watching clouds drift over the terraces or sunlight breaking through the mist can feel unexpectedly profound. And yet this way of life is not untouched by change. Tourism has found its way into the valley, bringing both opportunity and challenge. The delicate balance between preservation and progress is something the village continues to navigate day by day. Still, despite these shifts, Cat holds on to something rare. A connection between people and place that feels increasingly difficult to find. Because here in the highlands of Sapa nature is not just a backdrop, it is a presence. It shapes the land, guides the rhythm of life, and quietly reminds those who pass through that some of the most beautiful places in the world are not defined by how much they change, but by how much they remain the same. Penglipuran village, Bali, Indonesia. There are places in the world where beauty feels spontaneous, wild, unpredictable, shaped by nature alone. And then there are places like Penglipuran, a village where nothing appears accidental, where every path, every doorway, every line seems to exist with quiet intention. Hidden in the highlands of Bali, far from the island's crowded beaches and buzzing nightlife, Penglipuran reveals itself slowly. The road narrows, the air cools, and without warning you find yourself standing at the entrance of a village that feels almost too perfect. A single stone pathway stretches forward, cutting straight through the heart of the village. On either side, traditional Balinese homes stand in flawless symmetry, their gates aligned with a precision that feels almost ceremonial. There's no chaos here, no clutter, only order, balance, and a sense of calm that settles in almost immediately. At first, it's easy to admire Penglipuran for its beauty alone. The clean pathways, the carefully maintained gardens, the absence of noise, of traffic, of anything that might disrupt the stillness. But the longer you stay, the more you begin to realize this village is not just designed to look harmonious. It is built upon a deeper philosophy. Penglipuran follows the ancient Balinese concept of Trihita Karana, the idea that true well-being comes from harmony between humans, nature, and the spiritual world. And here, that philosophy isn't explained. It's lived. Each home is constructed according to traditional rules passed down through generations. The layout of the village itself reflects a sacred orientation toward the mountains, which are believed to be the dwelling place of the gods. Even the smallest details, from the placement of shrines to the structure of family compounds, follow a quiet, enduring logic. And And yet for all its structure, Penglipuran never feels rigid. Walk a little further and you'll notice doors left open. Inside, families go about their day preparing offerings, tending to daily chores, sharing quiet conversations. The scent of incense drifts through the air, blending with the earthy smell of bamboo forests that surround the village like a protective barrier. That forest, just beyond the village edge, is more than scenery. It is sacred. Protected for generations, it serves as both a spiritual space and a reminder of the balance the village strives to maintain. Step inside and the atmosphere shifts, cooler, quieter, almost reverent. Sunlight filters through tall bamboo stalks, creating a soft shifting pattern on the ground, as if the forest itself is breathing. But perhaps what makes Penglipuran most intriguing is the question it quietly raises. In a world that often celebrates growth, expansion, and constant change, how does a place like this continue to exist so unchanged? Tourism has arrived, of course. Visitors walk the same central path, cameras in hand, drawn by the village's rare sense of order and tranquility. And Penglipuran has managed something few places can claim. It has welcomed the outside world without losing itself to it. There is a quiet discipline here. A shared understanding among its people that what they preserve is more valuable than what they might gain by letting it go. And as you stand on that central path, looking toward the distant mountains, it becomes clear Penglipuran is not just a village you visit. It is a place that invites you to imagine a different way of living. One where balance is not something we search for, but something we choose to protect. Batad Village, Philippines. If Penglipuran feels like a village shaped by careful design and quiet discipline, then Batad is something entirely different. Here there is no symmetry, no straight lines guiding your path, no sense that anything has been arranged for the sake of appearance. Instead, Batad unfolds like a natural masterpiece, raw, vast, and impossibly grand. Hidden deep within the mountains of northern Philippines, Batad is not a place you simply arrive at. You have to earn it. The journey begins long before the village comes into view. Roads give way to narrow trails, and eventually even those begin to disappear into the contours of the land. As you walk, the air grows thinner, the silence deeper. And then suddenly, without warning, the landscape opens up, and you see it. An enormous amphitheater of rice terraces carved into the mountainside, layer upon layer, rising in perfect curves that seem almost too precise to be real. Unlike the soft flowing terraces of Sapa, these feel monumental. engineered, ancient, as if they were built not just for farming but for something far greater. These terraces are over 2,000 years old, shaped by the Ifugao people using little more than hand tools, stone, and an understanding of the land that borders on the extraordinary. Each level is fed by an intricate irrigation system that draws water from the forests above an unbroken chain of knowledge passed down through generations. At the center of it all sits the village itself. Small, humble, almost hidden within the vastness that surrounds it. There are no cars here, no roads cutting through the terraces. Everything, food, materials, daily necessities, is carried in by hand. Life in Batad is not curated for visitors. It continues as it always has, shaped by effort, patience, and a deep reliance on the land. As you move through the village, the scale of it all begins to shift your perspective. The terraces are not just scenery, they are life. Every curve represents labor, every stone intention, and every harvest survival. But Batad's magic doesn't reveal itself all at once. It lingers in the details. In the sound of footsteps echoing along narrow ridges between terraces, in the sight of farmers moving steadily across steep slopes with a kind of balance that feels almost instinctive. In the distant roar of Tapia Falls, hidden beyond the village where water crashes down through dense jungle like a force untouched by time. And then there's the silence. Not emptiness, but a kind of presence. A stillness that makes you aware of just how far removed this place is from everything else. No traffic. No constant signal. Just wind water and the quiet rhythm of a community that has learned to exist within its limits. If Penglipuran invites you to imagine a life of balance and order, Batad challenges you to consider something deeper. What does it mean to truly depend on the land beneath your feet? Because here there is no separation between people and nature. No illusion of control. Only coexistence. And in that coexistence, something extraordinary has endured, not just a village, but a way of life carved into the mountains themselves, standing resilient against time, isolation, and the ever-encroaching pull of the modern world. Mae Hong Son, Thailand. There are places that reveal themselves all at once, and others that remain just out of reach, hidden behind layers of distance, terrain, and time. Mae Hong Son belongs to the latter. Tucked deep within the mountainous folds of northwestern Thailand, near the border with Myanmar, this quiet province feels less like a destination and more like a place the modern world simply forgot to claim. Getting here is not straightforward. The journey winds through hundreds of sharp curves, climbing and descending through dense forest and mist-covered ridges, as if testing your intention to arrive. And perhaps that's part of its quiet allure. Because when you finally reach Mae Hong Son, what greets you is not spectacle but stillness. A small town rests gently beside a lake, its surface so calm that it mirrors everything above it with near-perfect clarity. Wooden houses, temple roofs, distant hills, all reflected in a way that blurs the line between what is real and what is only an image. At sunset, when the sky softens into shades of gold and violet, the entire scene begins to feel almost suspended, as if time itself has chosen to slow down here. But beyond the lake, beyond the temples, Mae Hong Son begins to unfold in quieter, more intimate ways. Small villages are scattered across the surrounding mountains, connected by narrow roads and footpaths that weave through valleys and forests. Many of these communities belong to ethnic groups, such as the Karen and Shan, each carrying traditions shaped by both geography and history. Wooden homes stand elevated above the ground, built to endure both the terrain and the changing seasons. Life here follows patterns that feel steady, deliberate, and deeply rooted. In the early morning, mist drifts slowly through the valleys, settling between hills and rooftops like a soft veil. It's not dramatic or overwhelming, it's subtle. The kind of beauty that doesn't demand attention, but rewards those who take the time to notice. And that's what makes Mae Hong Son different. It doesn't try to impress. There are no grand landmarks competing for your focus, no singular moment designed to take your breath away. Instead, the experience builds gradually through quiet walks, passing encounters, the distant sound of temple bells echoing across the water. Even the culture here feels understated. You might notice it in the way locals move through their day unhurried and composed. In the presence of small shrines and offerings placed carefully along paths and doorways. In the way traditions are not displayed, but simply lived, woven into daily routines without explanation. As night falls, the town grows even quieter. Lights reflect softly on the lake. Conversations fade. The surrounding mountains disappear into darkness, leaving behind only a sense of space, wide open and undisturbed. And somewhere in that stillness, a different kind of thought begins to take shape. Not about how much there is to see, but how much there is to feel. Because Mae Hong Son doesn't overwhelm you with beauty. It invites you into it slowly, gently, almost reluctantly. And in doing so, it offers something increasingly rare, a place where nothing is rushed, nothing is forced, and where the quiet might just be the most unforgettable part of all. Nong Khiaw, Laos. There are places that invite you to slow down, and then there are places where slowing down isn't a choice, it simply happens. Nong Khiaw is one of them. Set along the banks of the Nam U River in northern Laos, this small village feels like it exists in a quiet pause between moments. Not frozen in time, but untouched by the urgency that seems to define so much of the modern world. The first thing you notice isn't the village itself, it's the landscape. Towering limestone mountains rise sharply from the earth, their jagged silhouettes cutting into the sky with a kind of quiet authority. In the early morning, they disappear almost entirely, swallowed by thick layers of mist that drift slowly across the valley. And as the sun begins to rise, those peaks emerge again one by one, as if the land itself is waking up. Below, the Nam U River moves steadily through it all. Wide, calm, and reflective, it carries with it not just water, but the rhythm of life in Nong Khiaw. Wooden boats glide across its surface without hurry. Their engines hum softly, never breaking the stillness, only blending into it. Along the riverbanks, simple homes stand on stilts built just high enough to adapt to the changing seasons. There's no excess here. Everything feels purposeful, balanced. Life in Nong Khiaw unfolds in small, quiet moments. A fisherman casting his net into the river as the morning fog lifts. A child walking barefoot along the edge of a dusty path. The distant sound of cooking fires being lit as the day begins. These aren't scenes arranged for visitors. They are fragments of everyday life, moving at a pace that feels almost forgotten. Still, there's a quiet depth to this place that reveals itself only if you're willing to look a little longer. Climb to one of the viewpoints above the village, and the perspective shifts entirely. From above, Nong Khiaw appears small, almost fragile, resting between mountains that have stood for millions of years. The river winds through the valley like a silver thread, connecting everything in a way that feels both simple and profound. It's here in that stillness that the noise of everything else begins to fade. No constant notifications. No crowded streets, just space, silence, and the subtle realization of how rarely we allow ourselves to experience either. But Nong Khiaw is not untouched by the outside world. Travelers have found their way here, drawn by its raw beauty and quiet atmosphere. Small guest houses line parts of the river, offering glimpses into a life far removed from the familiar. Still, the village holds its ground. There's no rush to transform, no urgency to become something else. What exists here remains rooted in the land, in the river, in the rhythm that has guided generations before. And perhaps that's what makes Nong Khiaw feel so quietly powerful. Because after places like Pai, where time softens and stretches, Nong Khiaw takes you one step further. It doesn't just slow you down. It reminds you what stillness actually feels like. Indein village, Inle Lake, Myanmar. Out on the still waters of Inle Lake, where the horizon blurs between sky and reflection, there is a place that feels less like a village and more like a memory of something long forgotten. Indein doesn't reveal itself all at once. The journey begins on the lake itself. A narrow wooden boat cuts quietly across the water, passing fishermen who balance effortlessly on one leg as they cast their nets, a practice so unique it feels almost ritualistic. The lake is calm, almost glass-like, reflecting everything with a soft distortion that makes it hard to tell where reality ends and illusion begins. Gradually, the open water gives way to narrow canals. Wooden houses rise on stilts above the surface, their reflections stretching below them like shadows caught in time. Life here unfolds gently, cooking, washing, quiet conversation, everything moving in harmony with the water beneath. And then as the boat reaches the edge of the village, the landscape begins to shift. A path leads inland away from the lake into something far more unexpected. At first you notice fragments, stone structures partially hidden by trees, worn by time, softened by moss and weather. But as you continue, those fragments begin to multiply, until suddenly you're surrounded. Hundreds of ancient stupas rise from the earth in every direction. Some stand tall, their golden tops still catching the light. Others lean cracked and crumbling, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Vines wrap around their bases. Trees grow between them. The forest doesn't hide these structures. It weaves through them, blurring the line between what was built and what has always been there. No one knows exactly how many stupas exist here. Some date back hundreds of years, built as acts of devotion, markers of faith, or quiet attempts to leave something behind. Over time, many were abandoned, left to weather the elements in silence. And yet, walking through Indein, it doesn't feel abandoned. It feels preserved in a different way. There are no crowds pushing through narrow paths, no overwhelming noise. Just the sound of wind moving through the trees, brushing softly against stone that has stood for generations. Occasionally you'll pass a local villager or a monk in quiet motion, their presence adding to the sense that this place is still very much alive, just not in the way most places are. There's something deeply atmospheric about Indein. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, but lingering. It's in the way the light filters through the trees, catching on ancient surfaces. In the stillness that seems to settle the deeper you walk. In the quiet awareness that you're standing among structures built long before the modern world began to take shape. And unlike the villages that came before, Indein doesn't ask you to reflect on lifestyle or pace or balance. Instead, it invites a different kind of thought. What do we leave behind? Because here, surrounded by centuries-old devotion, slowly blending back into the landscape, it becomes clear some places are not meant to be preserved perfectly. Some are meant to fade, gently, beautifully, becoming part of the story they once tried to tell. Kampong Phluk, Cambodia. There are villages built on land, and then there are places like Kampong Phluk, where land itself feels optional. Out on the vast waters of Tonle Sap Lake in Cambodia, this village doesn't sit beside the water. It lives within it, breathes with it. Depends on it in ways that feel almost unimaginable if you've spent your life on solid ground. At first, it's disorienting. As your boat approaches the horizon, looks empty, just water stretching endlessly under an open sky. And then slowly shapes begin to appear. Tall wooden structures rising impossibly high above the surface. Houses on stilts so long and slender they look almost fragile, as if they shouldn't be able to hold anything at all. Kampong Phluk, Cambodia. But they do. During the wet season, when the lake expands and swallows the surrounding land, the water rises dramatically, sometimes up to 10 meters. What would normally be ground disappears completely. Roads vanish. Fields dissolve into the lake. And Kampong Phluk transforms into a floating world. Boats replace footsteps. Front doors open directly onto water. Daily life shopping, visiting neighbors, even going to school happens by boat. It's not a novelty here. It's just life. Kids paddle effortlessly through narrow waterways, steering with a confidence that comes from growing up surrounded by water. Families cook clean and carry on their routines as if nothing is unusual, because to them it isn't. And then there's the flooded forest. Just beyond the village, the landscape shifts into something almost surreal. Trees rise straight out of the water, their trunks submerged, their branches stretching high above like a canopy suspended in midair. As your boat glides through this quiet maze, the outside world fades away. It's silent, still, almost dreamlike. Sunlight filters through the leaves, reflecting off the water in soft, shifting patterns. The only sound is the gentle ripple of your boat moving forward. For a moment, it feels like you've drifted into a place that doesn't quite belong to reality, something caught between land and water, between presence and illusion. And yet Kampong Phluk is anything but fragile. This is a community built on adaptation, on understanding that stability doesn't always come from solid ground. It can come from flexibility, from learning to move with change rather than resist it. Of course, life here isn't easy. The rising and falling waters dictate everything. Livelihoods depend heavily on fishing on seasonal cycles that can be unpredictable. And as climate patterns shift, those cycles become harder to rely on. But still the village endures. There's a kind of resilience here that doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up in quiet ways, in the way homes are built to withstand the water, in the way people navigate their environment with ease, in the way life continues, no matter how much the landscape transforms. And maybe that's what makes Kampong Phluk so captivating. It challenges something we often take for granted, the idea that we need firm ground beneath our feet to feel secure. Because here, surrounded by water that is constantly rising, falling, changing, people have found a way not just to survive, but to belong. Kampung Pelangi, Malaysia? Not all transformations are shaped by nature. Some are created by human hands, deliberate, bold, and impossible to ignore. Kampung Pelangi, often known as the Rainbow Village, stands as a striking contrast to everything we've seen so far. There are no ancient terraces here, no mist-covered mountains, no centuries-old structures slowly merging with the landscape. Instead, what you find is color, intense, unapologetic, and everywhere. Kampung Pelangi, Malaysia? From above, the village looks almost unreal. Roofs painted in bright reds, yellows, blues, and greens form a patchwork of color that stretches across the hillside. Walls are covered in murals, patterns, and playful designs that seem to compete for attention. Even the narrow pathways between homes are painted, turning simple walks into something closer to moving through a living canvas. But this wasn't always the case. Kampung Pelangi was once an ordinary village, quiet, overlooked, and struggling. Like many small communities, it faced challenges tied to economic opportunity and visibility. It was a place people passed by, not a place they stopped. Until everything changed. In a coordinated effort to revive the area, the entire village was repainted. What began as a local initiative quickly transformed into something much larger, a complete reimagining of space identity and possibility. And it worked. Today, visitors arrive not for history, but for experience. Cameras replace curiosity at first drawn by the sheer visual impact. Every corner offers something new. A staircase painted in gradients, walls covered in geometric shapes, doors framed by bursts of color. But spend a little more time here and the story begins to shift. Because behind the colors, life continues much as it always has. Families still live in these homes. Children still play in the streets. Daily routines unfold against a backdrop that feels almost too vibrant to be real. The extraordinary has become ordinary for those who call this place home. There's something fascinating about that contrast. What feels like spectacle to a visitor is simply environment to a resident. The colors don't define the life here, they frame it. Yet they've undeniably changed the village's trajectory. Tourism has brought new energy, new income, new attention. Small businesses have emerged. The village once overlooked now draws people from across the region and beyond. It's a reminder that transformation doesn't always mean losing identity. Sometimes it's about reinterpreting it. Still, Kampung Pelangi raises a quiet question. What happens when a place becomes known for how it looks? Because beneath the surface, beyond the photographs and bright facades, there remains a community navigating the balance between visibility and authenticity. And perhaps that's what makes this village so compelling. It's not just a place that was changed, it's a place that chose to change. In a region filled with villages shaped by tradition and nature, Kampung Pelangi stands apart as something entirely different. A reminder that enchantment doesn't always come from age or isolation. Sometimes it comes from the courage to become something new. Wae Rebo village, Flores, Indonesia. High above the lowlands of Flores, hidden deep within a ring of mountains, there is a village that seems to exist beyond the reach of time. Wae Rebo is not a place you arrive at easily. The journey begins at the edge of the modern world, where roads end and footpaths take over. From there, it's a steep climb through dense forest, guided only by narrow trails that wind upward into the mountains. The air grows cooler with every step. The sounds of civilization fade, replaced by wind moving through trees and the distant calls of unseen wildlife. And then, after hours of walking, the forest begins to open. What emerges feels almost unreal. A small clearing surrounded by mist-covered peaks. And at its center, a cluster of towering cone-shaped houses perfectly arranged as if placed with intention rather than built over time. These are the Ambaruniang traditional homes, unlike anything else in Southeast Asia. Each structure rises several stories high, its thatched roof extending all the way to the ground in a smooth, continuous curve. There are no sharp edges, no visible divisions, just a single unified form that feels both simple and deeply sophisticated. From a distance, the village resembles something almost otherworldly. 7 conical silhouettes standing quietly against a backdrop of shifting clouds, as if they belong to another era, or perhaps another world entirely. But Wae Rebo is not abandoned. It is very much alive. Inside each house, multiple families live together, sharing space in a way that reflects a deeply communal way of life. The interior is dim lit softly by filtered daylight and the glow of small fires. Wooden beams support the structure above, while the air carries the scent of earth smoke and time. Life here follows rhythms that have remained unchanged for generations. Farming, weaving, gathering, conversations that stretch into the evening as fog settles once again over the mountains. There is no rush, no excess, only a steady continuity shaped by environment and tradition. And then there is the silence. Not emptiness, but something fuller. A silence that comes from isolation, from distance, from being completely removed from the noise of the outside world. Even the wind feels softer here, as if careful not to disturb the balance of the village. Clouds drift constantly through the clearing, sometimes revealing the village in full clarity, other times swallowing it entirely. In those moments, Wae Rebo seems to disappear, hidden once again from view, known only to those willing to make the journey. Recognition has come in recent years. The village has drawn attention for its cultural significance and architectural uniqueness. Visitors now make the trek seeking to witness something rare and authentic. But Wae Rebo remains unchanged in the ways that matter most. The structures are preserved not as relics, but as living spaces. Traditions are not performed, they are practiced. And the connection between people and place remains intact, grounded in respect, continuity, and shared identity. In a region filled with remarkable villages, Wae Rebo stands apart. Not because it is louder or more visible, but because it is hidden. And in that hiddenness, it has managed to protect something increasingly rare. A way of life that has not been reshaped by the modern world, but quietly continues high above it. Kampong Ayer, Brunei. Along the banks of the Brunei River, just beyond the modern skyline of Bandar Seri Begawan, lies a settlement that has endured for over 1,000 years, quietly adapting, evolving, and continuing to exist in a way few places have managed to preserve. Kampong Ayer is often called the Venice of the East, but the comparison only tells part of the story. Because this is not a place built for romance or spectacle. It is a living city on water. Kampong Ayer, Brunei. From above, the scale becomes clear. Hundreds of wooden houses stretch across the river, all raised on stilts, connected by an intricate network of walkways and bridges. Mosques, schools, shops, even fire stations stand above the water, forming a complete functioning community that never truly touches land. Boats move constantly through narrow channels, acting as taxis, deliveries, and lifelines all at once. The sound of their engines hums steadily in the background, blending with the rhythm of daily life. However, despite its size and complexity, Kampong Ayer feels deeply personal. Step onto one of the wooden walkways and the pace shifts. You're no longer observing from a distance, you're inside it. Children run between houses. Neighbors pause to talk across railings. Doors remain open, offering glimpses into interiors where life unfolds simply and without pretense. There is history here, centuries of it. Long before modern buildings rose along the riverbanks, Kampong Ayer was the center of Brunei's civilization. Foreign explorers once described it as a thriving water city, rich with culture and movement. And while the world around it has changed dramatically, the village has not disappeared. It has adapted. Modern utilities now run beneath the wooden structures. Electricity, internet, and schools exist alongside traditional homes. It is not frozen in time, but it hasn't abandoned its roots either. That balance is what defines Kampong Ayer. A place where past and present don't compete. They coexist. As the day draws to a close, the atmosphere begins to shift. The sun lowers over the river, casting warm light across the water. Reflections stretch and ripple beneath the houses. In the distance, the golden domes of nearby mosques begin to glow. It's quiet but not silent, alive but never overwhelming. And in that moment, standing between water and sky, it becomes clear. This is not just a village. It is a testament to continuity, to adaptation, to the idea that even in a rapidly changing world, some ways of life don't disappear, they simply learn how to endure. Across Southeast Asia, these villages reveal something rare, not just beauty but perspective. Each one offers a different way of living. Some shaped by mountains, others by water, some by tradition, and others by transformation. And yet all of them share a quiet resilience, a willingness to adapt without losing identity. In a world that moves faster every day, these places remind us to pause, to look closer, to appreciate lives lived differently. Because sometimes the most extraordinary destinations aren't defined by how far they've come, but by how deeply they've stayed connected to where they began.